Do you recognize this anime girl? You're not alone. Lovingly dubbed the Gothic anime angel by Western anime fandom, this image was all over the internet in the 2000s. From Blingee edits to Myspace profile photos, from nightcore videos to fanfiction covers. This illustration became a huge part of online anime culture in the West. So much so that when a random Twitter user challenged artists to redraw her, thousands of people joined in, sharing all of the memories and stories that they had tied to her image. If you were online during the Gothic anime angel's peak, you might recognize some of these other images that spread around the internet in a similar way. Used everywhere from forum signatures to Quizilla test results, these characters weren't just popular, they became a huge inspiration for many young girls' art, fashion, writing, and even their personal identities. Being the curious weeaboo that I am, I wanted to dig deeper into the origins of these images, and I discovered that most of them have some less than ideal sources from a very different corner of the internet. So, who are these viral anime divas from our childhood? Who drew them and why? How did the preteens of the West find these images in the first place? And most importantly, how were these images virally embraced by a totally different audience than the one that they were originally meant for? Let's take a deep dive into the internet past, where I'll explore the source of every single one of these images and uncover the unfortunate story behind these viral anime divas. But first, welcome, I'm Amber. I draw cartoons for a living, make games for fun, and I do these cool little video essays on the side where I talk about anime, 2000s internet culture, alt fashion, retro and indie games, basically whatever I feel like yapping about for an hour. If any of that sounds like something that you're into, I'd love if you poke that little subscribe button down below, but for now, let's just get into it. While there were many widely used anime girl illustrations that I consider defining imagery for the 2000s anime scene, there is no arguing that the Gothic anime angel is the most iconic and the most widely recognized, the queen to rule them all. The Gothic anime angel was an original character created by the Japanese artist Hiro Suzuhira for the art magazine called E2. E2 is a bi-monthly magazine that features illustrations from a large number of Bishoujo game and manga artists. Unlike similar art magazines in Japan, E2 focuses solely on the original characters made by the artists, and promotes the sale of merchandise of said characters like posters, tapestries, and even figurines. The Gothic anime angel specifically was actually created for E2's first original character figurine project all the way back in 2005. She sold for around $80 back then, but in 2025, a good condition version of the Gothic anime angel figurine now sells for over $1,000. Her figurine is considered a holy grail collection piece in the Western anime figure community, likely due to the vast influence the original illustration had on us in our youth. I'm gonna be real with you guys, as a casual figure collector myself, if any of my YouTube videos ever pop off, this figure is now at the top of my to-buy list. Like and subscribe to make an old weeaboo's dreams come true. In 2010, the Gothic anime angel figurine was unofficially recast by E2046, a known bootleg anime figure distributor who also created a second unofficial version of her design. The bootleg version sold for a whopping $160, double the price of the original figurine. While Suzuhira drew characters that looked similar to the angel throughout the years, the angel herself lay dormant until 2020, when Twitter user Panties-chan challenged the art community to redraw her as a way to celebrate the new year. This art challenge quickly resonated with artists of all skill levels and art styles, with hundreds of images in her likeness flooding across every corner of social media. People also shared story after story of their memories with this image. I asked you guys to share your memories of the Gothic anime angel and other viral anime girls of the 2000s. This is what you had to say. Images like these planted the seeds in my brain to make more of my own characters and to tell more stories. They were my internal image of good art. I had to draw like that. I use them as character art or roleplay art. I have such positive nostalgia for them. Many of you use these images in the exact same ways that I did, as GaiaOnline profile decor, as role-playing characters, and even as inspiration for your own OCs in art. There's something so incredible about the idea that so many of us have a collective, shared cultural experience tied to the same piece of artwork we all just happened to stumble upon one day after school. The virality of the Gothic anime angel redraw trend speaks volumes to the impact that just one illustration could have on an entire generation of people, and created a nostalgic, comforting vibe of solidarity and community around these shared memories. Eventually, Suzuhira caught wind of this trend, and surprised by the widespread impact her old drawing had on the Western internet sphere, jumped into the ring and redrew the Gothic anime angel herself. At face value, the story of the Gothic anime angel is an incredible tale that represents how art can touch people across time, age, and even language barriers. But when we dig deeper into the Bishoujo game industry that her artist was a part of, the audience that the Gothic anime angel was originally meant meant for, and the context behind her creation, her story becomes a little more uncomfortable. The term Bishoujo translates to beautiful young girl, and very specifically, a beautiful young girl that is a minor. An anime game or manga with the Bishoujo genre is not the same thing as being in the shoujo genre. Although if my memory serves me correctly, the terms were often used interchangeably in the early Western internet. It's honestly a pretty easy mix-up though, because at the surface level, the art styles of Bishoujo games and shoujo manga and anime are often very similar. The important thing that separates them is their target audience. While shoujo anime like Inuyasha, Sailor Moon, and Ouran High School Host Club are generally intended to be consumed by 12 to 16-year-old girls, Bishoujo games were pretty consistently intended to be appealing to an adult male audience. And the grand majority of these Bishoujo games featuring beautiful young girls are sexually explicit 18+ titles. Now, I do want to be clear that the word Bishoujo itself does not always have sexual context, as seen in its use in the Japanese Sailor Moon title. However, Bishoujo games specifically do have the cultural and linguistic context of being sexual by default. The Bishoujo game genre first appeared in Japan in the 80s, and while they didn't become widely popular at first, they gained a small but loyal fan base, including the infamous Japanese serial killer Tsutomu Miyazaki. Known as the otaku murderer, his horrific crimes led to a huge backlash in Japan against otaku culture, and specifically certain otaku's fixation on sexually violent and focused content. Bishoujo games and visual novels of many kinds, including those without sexual content, were at a real risk of being banned outright by the Japanese government. This prompted the creation of the Ethics Organization for Computer Software, or EOCS for short, which created stern age rating standards for visual novels, similar to how the ESRB in the US works. With the EOCS being able to manage the distribution of Bishoujo games in a way that kept them out of controversy, the larger backlash against otaku culture in Japan died down a bit, leading to a Bishoujo game boom in the 90s and 2000s. But even though some of the more egregiously obscene Bishoujo games were filtered out due to the EOCS's guidelines, the common denominator that these games shared was, and continues to be, the sexualization of girls as young as 10 years old. And now here's the elephant in the room. Hiro Suzuhira, the creator of the Gothic anime Angel, has had a long, illustrious career in doing art for Bishoujo games. She has done most of her career work on sexually explicit visual novels featuring underage characters, usually high school girls. Her most famous project was the 18+ visual novel Shuffle, which was also adapted into an anime, manga, and audio dramas. If you were deep in the GaiaOnline trenches like I was, you might even recognize some of these old Shuffle characters from the old roleplay forums as well. And while the Gothic anime Angel was never drawn sexually herself, at least as far as I can tell, the magazine E2, the place where her image was first printed, is a Bishoujo softcore porn magazine, featuring specifically underage girls intended to be consumed by adult men. Like, it's not technically hentai, but I definitely can't show some of these images on YouTube without getting demonetized or banned. And I don't know, it was pretty uncomfortable for me to come to terms with the fact that this character that appealed so widely to teenage girls was originally designed and distributed in a magazine for grown men attracted to teenage girls. Before we continue, let's be clear about a few things. Explicit sexual content featuring underage characters is not okay. Adults creating and consuming explicit sex games of underage children is gross. And I'm not here for the but actually debates, okay? But I also want to be clear that I don't think that the concept of dating sims or visual novels themselves are inherently an issue. Not all dating sims and visual novels contain this nasty stuff. Obviously, I know this already, considering the fact that most of my favorite games and stories of all time are visual novels. And not all Bishoujo character design tropes or art styles are inherently problematic. In the modern era, the term Bishoujo has kind of lost some of the baggage and intention that it originally carried in the otaku culture's earlier days. And now Bishoujo is often used to refer to any anime girl design that is beautiful and attractive and isn't designed to look like a noticeably older woman. We can look to the Kotobikuya Bishoujo figures line as a modern example of Bishoujo's usage. For example, it's pretty clear to me that the Bishoujo Beetlejuice figurine does not portray a minor in design or in source material. It's also pretty clear to me that the Bishoujo Uhura is also not portraying a minor. Both of these figurines are examples of sexy, beautiful, stylized adult anime women, who I need to get shipped to me immediately. But regardless of how the term Bishoujo has evolved as time has progressed, the Bishoujo game, manga, and anime industry of the 90s and 2000s was clearly and unapologetically in the market of selling of underage girls to adult men. And as I continued researching the other viral anime girl illustrations of the 2000s, I noticed that pretty much every single one of these images has the exact same ties to the Bishoujo game world. Let's do a quick speedrun. So this artist's safe for work stuff is extremely popular on Pinterest, even today. It does seem that a lot of this artist's work is sold and distributed predominantly offline, but the artworks I have found online include softcore fan art of characters canonically as young as 13 years old. I also found that they sell graphic manga with illustrations that feature original characters that have ages I can't directly confirm, but very clearly appear to be prepubescent. This image was created by a Bishoujo game artist that specializes in drawing sexually explicit works with characters that are literal elementary school children, with the youngest canonical age that I could find being 11 years old. This character is from a particularly gruesome series in which this 15-year-old girl is apart from the and presumably by monsters. Here we have a set of original characters from another Bishoujo game artist that draws kids as young as 12 years old. And finally, the infamous Nightcore DJ is the main character of a game featuring high schoolers. Honestly, I feel like I should have known better. I was on the internet in the 2000s. We had a whole song about this, for Christ's sake. But these illustrations are just so nostalgic and endearing to me, and they were such a major influence on my childhood, my art, my fashion, my interests. In a way, it almost feels like they've grown into something bigger than their questionable source material, as if somehow they managed to transcend their original context entirely. So, how did this even happen? How did the preteens of the West end up parading around with underage characters as their icons for a decade? It's difficult for me to pinpoint the exact trail of breadcrumbs, with only the ghosts of old forum posts and broken Wayback Machine snapshots to guide me, but I can make an educated guess based on how the internet was structured at the time. In the early 2000s, the Japanese image board 2chan was a big stomping ground for otaku, the type of people that were into Bishoujo games. Since 2chan was less scrutinized and regulated by the Japanese government than other websites at the time, largely due to the fact that it was hosted in the United States, it was a safe place to share images and discussions on more controversial interests and topics. You know, things like sharing images from games featuring children. In 2003, 4chan launched as the English language version of 2chan, seeking to foster the same off-limits, you can post all the sketchy stuff you want type of environment that 2chan did. This made it easier for the Western otaku types to find and share the same types of content, including the very same images from Bishoujo games and magazines being shared on 2chan. Then, in 2005, Danburu came into the picture, which, if you're unfamiliar, Danburu is like this giant anime image repository, primarily for images, but not exclusively. You may have heard the word buru used in other contexts, like gel buru, safe buru, or if you're a Vinesauce fan like me, Vine Buru. Danburu was the original buru that all of these other websites were based and built off of. Finally, in the mid to late 2000s, the image hosting platform PhotoBucket reached its peak of popularity, accounting for 2% of all American internet traffic in 2006. PhotoBucket was in very popular usage with Neopets users, LiveJournal users, GaiaOnline users, Myspace users, and others. During this era, most websites didn't allow you to upload images or videos directly to their platforms. Rather, you had to embed images uploaded to an image host with HTML. So if you wanted to show off the cool aim icons that you made in a blog post, or share the picture that you picked out for your roleplay character, you almost exclusively had to do that via PhotoBucket. What I would argue is the most important piece of this mystery was PhotoBucket's search feature, which provided users with the ability to search through all of the images that other users had uploaded to their own personal accounts, filtering the results by using the image's title, description, file name, and tags. So with all of this in mind, here's how I think the game of Bishoujo Telephone actually went down. These images would be uploaded first to 2chan, either as a rip from a magazine, from the original source game itself, or from the original artist's portfolio website. The image would then get re-uploaded to 4chan by Western otaku discussing the same source media. These images would then find their way over to Danburu, sometimes without sources. Somewhere along the line, either by the otaku types who did know the sources, or simply the gooners looking at Danburu for a quick anti-fix, users would grab the images they liked from Danburu and save them onto their own personal photo bucket for later use, titling or labeling them in some way with the words anime and girl. So when the preteen girls of the West began searching for anime girl via Photobucket's search feature, they'd stumble upon these images without having any indication of their source. And then those girls would save them to their own Photobucket accounts, labeling them anime and girl, and would even sometimes edit them to be much different from the original image itself, creating this exponential chain of saved and resaved anime girl pictures with all of the JPEG artifacts that came with that. I definitely think this phenomenon is kind of a weird quirk of the 2000s internet that probably wouldn't be replicated in the modern era. People post art without proper credit or sources all the time nowadays. But with tools like Google's reverse image search, it's usually not that difficult to figure out where art came from nowadays. Another major difference is the way that the internet is used today, how fans of art use it, and how artists use it. Nowadays, people usually consume art straight from the artist account itself, being exposed to it via retweets on Twitter, reblogs on Tumblr, TikTok feeds, Instagram, or wherever else. Back in the 90s to mid-2000s, Japanese artists seemed to primarily share their artwork on their own personal blogs and websites. I'm not as familiar with the old Japanese internet as I am the Western internet, so I'm not sure what predecessors might have existed, but the most popular Japanese art-based social media websites today are Pixiv and Twitter, which didn't launch until 2006 and 2007 respectively, meaning it was much easier for the source of the artwork to be lost when the website that it came from was one that almost nobody would realistically stumble upon or visit regularly. From a cultural perspective, the how did this happen question is a little bit more interesting to me. From my research and anecdotal experience, it seems to me that because these images were more often used by young girls in the West, rather than being lusted after the way they were with their intended adult audience in Japan, in the Western internet space, they were used in ways that felt more as if they were wish fulfillment for these girls, idolizing them as something they wanted to be or achieve. They were used as the face claims for the protagonists of their fan fictions, their roleplay characters, their profile pictures, and their forum icons and signatures that represented who they were as they explored the Wild West that was the internet. At the very least, they were saved to these young girls' Photobucket accounts as a little pocket of inspiration. Or if you were a real weirdo like me, you printed them out, you stuck them in your binder, and you tried to draw them as you sat bored in class. Off the cuff, but I also used to print out my roleplays from Gaia and I'd put them in binders like this, and I'd bring them to my friends at school and be like, please read my roleplay, it's so good. Mind you, they weren't in the role plays themselves. I was just bringing role plays for them to read. Even though they didn't even know what role playing was, I was just, hey, look what I wrote. Look what I wrote with my friends. And they would actually read them. I had some pretty good friends as a kid. You see, when I was a young girl, I fell in love with anime at first, yeah. It felt to me that anime was filling a media void that Western animation wasn't really catering to at the time. Back in 2020, the president of the Warner Brothers Kids Media Division sparked a lot of controversy with this quote. Girls often graduate out of animation. Some of our most incredible competitors have been at the live action game for a long time. We know that's what girls want. With live action, we're excited to reflect the world as it is, inviting girls in without alienating the boys. And while he said that pretty recently in 2020, the sentiment that animation was a boys' medium is one that's been pervasive in Western animation for a very long time, especially back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. There were a lot of awesome shows for young girls in the West, like Powerpuff Girls, Kim Possible, and My Life as a Teenage Robot, but Western animation for teen girls, or even adult women, was pretty much non-existent. Shows like Fruits Basket, Inuyasha, or In High School Host Club, and many more actually felt like they were made for us, containing romance, adventure, drama, and most importantly, girls we could recognize ourselves in, girls we could look at and relate to aspire to be, girls that we could want to age into as we reached our own young adulthood. And back in the early to mid 2000s, it wasn't as easy for kids to find new anime outside of what was on TV. Pre-YouTube days, it was almost impossible, and even on early YouTube, unless you knew the show you wanted to find already, it was pretty difficult to find stuff that was age appropriate. Yeah, when I was a kid, I saw a lot of edgy and stuff I really shouldn't have. It was rough out there. So there we were, the Western kids of the early to mid 2000s, desperately craving more stories and characters that appealed specifically to us, with no idea how to actually find more. So we searched for things like anime girls on Google and Photobucket, where we found these characters that looked like Sakura, Kagome, Toru, and Ichigo, but we had no idea who they were, what they were from, or where to find more of them. And so instead, we collectively began to fantasize about them and what they could be. We imagined entire worlds, wrote and created our own stories with them in our head, on paper via fanfiction, and with others via roleplay. These anime girls began to take on a life of their own, similar to how the epics of old, like King Arthur or Gilgamesh, evolved as they traversed across culture, across linguistic barriers, across time. The stories and lore of these anime girls shifted and changed beyond just child lover goon fodder as they passed through each internet community, each fandom, and each young kid's heart. And despite their unfortunate true origins, I find there's a sense of ironic beauty to this, almost as if these anime girls were reclaimed by the kids who would be victimized by the people they were created for in the first place. What's sad to me though is that, unfortunately, the concept of young girls being drawn to cute anime girl characters only to find out later that it's con crap is something that's still actively occurring today. I was browsing TikTok one night while writing this video, and I came across people discussing the game Nekopara. I've never heard of it myself, but apparently the Nekopara characters and their figurines and posters and merch are quite popular with young Western girls who are fond of shoujo stuff and cute core aesthetics. I think it speaks a lot to how little animated media and nerd culture, both in Japan but especially in the West, actually truly considers the female gaze at all. This has been happening since basically forever, as seen in the English cardcaptor's dub attempt to appeal to boys as opposed to the female audience it was originally made for.
Shadow, wood, sword, thunder, power, sleep.
There's been a lot of progress in the right direction, don't get me wrong, but even titles like Madoka Magica, which by genre and story content alone should be expected to largely appeal to girls from 12 to 16, are still incredibly sexualized and absolutely pandering to the adult men who are attracted to children in the same breath. This otaku pandering thing has always been my least favorite part of being an anime fan, because not only is it super predatory and weird, but it also makes it almost impossible for me to recommend some of my favorite anime stuff to people who don't already know what to expect. Like, my favorite anime / visual novel series of all time is the When They Cry series. You know, Higurashi, Umineko, Kikonia. Higurashi specifically is really unfortunate because it's literally a story about children overcoming their trauma after the abuse and neglect that they've experienced at the hands of irresponsible adults and a society that's failed them. Higurashi was written by a man who used to be a child welfare social worker. In the visual novel, he covers a lot of topics surrounding childhood suffering and abuse, and does so with a lot of nuance, including toxic traditional family dynamics and literal grooming. As a childhood abuse survivor myself, this is why this story was so important to me. Not only when I first watched Higurashi as a 13-year-old, but even now as an adult. I saw myself in each and every one of the girls in the story, Rika and Beatrice in particular, and I found a lot of hope and comfort in the way that they were able to navigate, overcome, and come to terms with what happened to them. But the anime adaptations and merchandise for these projects would lead you to believe that it was a Gooner paradise. These characters that I've held on to from childhood as I grew into an adult who overcame her own trauma, with stories that share many similarities to my own childhood experiences, continue to be reduced by grown men as something to get off to. And it just really bums me out. It's a bummer with Higurashi, it's a bummer with the Gothic anime angel, and it's a bummer with all of the other beautiful illustrations of the Bishoujo anime girls that we idolized as kids. Now, to give the old Bishoujo games some credit, many of them have console releases that are family friendly. That is, the scenes have been removed entirely so younger audiences can more safely enjoy them. And apparently many of them have phenomenal character writing. And I mean, that's cool, I guess. I'm not going to shame anyone if they stumbled into liking the non-baiting versions of these projects, but the thing is, young girls shouldn't have to share the stories that are about them and the characters that look like them with adult men who are inappropriately attracted to them. To me, this isn't something that's up for debate, and it really bums me out that even now, this is something young girls continue to be forced to do. But since I like to try to view things with a positive lens, I think the happy ending to the very unfortunate story of the Gothic anime angel girl and friends is that not only did we reclaim these girls back in the 2000s by using them in our own way to tell our own stories regardless of the source, but in our own ways, we continue to reclaim them now. In my research for this video, I've stumbled across many artists redrawing the iconic Bishoujo game girls, not just the Gothic anime angel. And by doing this, they're paying homage to how influential they were to their own childhoods and artistic journeys. I've also noticed a big uptick, at least on my FYP, of people reclaiming the moe Bishoujo art style as a whole, creating the kind of art and characters they were so lovingly drawn to in the early 2000s, without the baggage of underage games behind them. And before anyone twists my words out of context. I'm not saying adult men can't enjoy media traditionally aimed at women. I have no issue with people of all kinds enjoying romance stories, stories about women of all ages, moe, bishoujo, cute art styles, or whatever. I just wish more of them could do that without having to make or consume of the literal children these stories are about. And I don't know, call me crazy, but I think that's a pretty reasonable wish to have. Unfortunately, we can't really stop creeps from being creeps, and they will likely always continue to do what they do as long as pockets of fandom allow them to do so. But I like to look at the bright side of things, and I find there's a lot of beauty in the Gothic anime angel hive mind that we all shared, regardless of her unfortunate background. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. I know I've been wearing my more cutesy pink stuff in my last few videos, so I hope my more gothy look doesn't scare any of you guys off. I really love alternative fashion subcultures of all kinds, so you'll have to get used to seeing me switch things up here and there. I have been kind of thinking of doing a Q&A if that's something that people would be interested in. I'm not sure if it's too early for me to do that kind of thing. I'd love if you left me a comment if that's something you're interested in, and maybe also whatever questions you might want me to answer. No worries if not, it's not like I'm not talking about myself and what I like on this channel at all times. If you enjoyed the video and you haven't yet, I would love it if you gave it a little like and you hit that subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys next time.